this is Anabelle with our On the Way Up series, and today we are talking to Sarah Williams. Do you want to start with introducing yourself, telling us where you're from, where you go to school, what you're studying?
Of course. So like I said, my name is Sarah Williams. I'm originally from Castaic, California. It's a little suburban area north of Los Angeles. I normally just say that I'm from LA. I go to school at San Diego State University, and I'm in my 5th and final year here at SDSU. I'm a double major in business management and theater arts. And then I also have the honors minor here at SDSU in interdisciplinary studies.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Do you have any ideas of what you're kind of hoping to do with your degree?
Yeah, so with business and theater, I'm hoping to work somewhere in the entertainment industry on like the behind the scenes or business aspect of it all. I grew up a dancer, so I was very into the arts and everything. And going into college, I was like, I know I want to work professionally in the arts, but I really wanted that business foundation too. So that was kind of the reasoning. But yeah, hopefully stage, production management, something like that.
That's great. So you've mentioned a little about like your dance and arts background. How was your upbringing, like in LA or in the arts? How's that influenced kind of your leadership style or where you're at today with your leadership?
Yeah, as far as like my upbringing goes, a lot of it did come from dance. I feel like anyone who plays a sport feels that like discipline that comes with it. Also just from my parents as well. My dad was in the military for 27 years, so that had a major impact on my upbringing. He was a very like quintessential strict straight edge like military or straight edge military parent, and so we were always expected to be like respectful, disciplined, really well mannered from a very young age. So that always really stuck with me. He was always very timely, always very so
Yeah.
that was always really instilled in me from a very young age. My mom also really emulated strong communication skills from a very young age. We always would get compliments, me and my brother, when we would be around like their like adult friends, like, oh, your kids are so well spoken. So we learned how to like be social even amongst adults from a really young age. And she really helped me to become social, outgoing and confident in a lot of different situations. And so those strengths have really stuck with me as well, and now being a very core part of my personality and how I interact with others. And yeah.
Oh, that's awesome that you can really go back and like pinpoint those specific things.
Yeah.
Not everyone can really find those like specific strengths that have stuck with them. So that's amazing. So what are some of the things that you do on campus at SDSU?
Yeah, so a lot of things. I'll name out all my involvements and then I'll focus on one of them specifically. Currently, my like part-time job on campus is working as a student assistant for the Residential Education Office. I'm also an SDSU ambassador on campus. So you might have something similar on your campus. We do like tours, we help with orientation. So I'm very involved as an ambassador. And then yeah, I think that's all right now. But I'll talk a little bit about like my past involvements as well, because I have a lot of experience in residential education. But yeah, specifically in my current role as a student assistant for the Residential Education Office, I really just help a lot behind the scenes with the operations that keep, residential life running smoothly. So, I mean, this can include anything from helping train student leaders. So, we have like resident advisors, community assistants. Those are student leaders who live in the residence halls and guide students. So we'll help plan training for them when they're coming back from semester breaks. We'll analyze like reports on conversations that those student leaders are having with their residents, just making sure that all of our residents are thriving, that there's not like any major issues that need to be followed up on. Yeah, just pretty much anything that they need help with, we jump in as a student assistant and help out. So just making sure everything in the office is running smoothly and overall just trying to create a positive resident experience whenever possible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we obviously, since we do have like on campus, people that live on campus, we have a good ResLife staff as well. So that's interesting to hear about. How did you get involved in the residential education?
Yeah, so that's been a majority of my leadership experience. My first year, I joined Hall Council, and then even more so Residence Hall Association. So Hall Council is like on the building level, and then Residence Hall Association is like all of the halls campus wide. So I became a leader in both of those organizations, and they're very much for residents who obviously want to make an impact on the residential community. So I started off there, and then the next 2 years I moved on to serve as a resident advisor. So I have experience being an RA, and I might be similar on your campus. I feel like it's always a very competitive position to be chosen for. So I was super honored to get the position and absolutely loved my time doing it. So I was in charge of a floor of about 100 residents, putting together programs, serving as a mentor for them in their first year of college. I mainly worked with first years, even though we do have student leaders for sophomore communities as well. So this year, even though I'm not an RA, working in residential, like in the office, definitely still allows me to feel like I'm a part of campus and student life and residential life. It's always been a huge passion of mine working in res ed. So the student assistant position was just kind of another way for me to support the program, more on the administrative side instead of kind of on the front lines as we normally think like RAs and CAs are on. But yeah, that was my background with res ed.
That's great. So our down, they're actually like experimenting with starting like hall councils. What do you think the value is of those, especially for maybe first year, second year students?
I think they're great. And I think like later in the interview, we'll probably get to like any, tips and advice I have for first year students, but any way to get involved is going to build like leadership skills and things like that. So especially in residential life, that's where you're like living, right? In college, that's your first year experience. That's like such a new transition. So hall councils really unite like a community, I feel like. Not that you all aren't like bonding and doing all this like community building on your own, but to kind of have like a formal way for students to like advocate for their fellow residents, host programs for the fellow residents. I think like to take pride in where you're living and building that community is really exciting and just a really fun opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, the structure seems really valuable. I'm excited to see kind of how it gets implemented here in the next year or so.
Yeah, I love
yeah, I think it'll be cool. Why is leadership important to your work in residential life in general, and then in specific, like your position as a student assistant in the office?
Yeah, so I think overall leadership is really important to residential life because all of the work that we do ultimately is a direct reflection on the university. And for me, being a leader on my campus, that's always something I've taken a lot of pride in, is that responsibility and, positively representing SDSU and then of course, residential education and everything I do on, off campus. I think a lot of times when we are talking about leadership or becoming, when you're a leader on your campus, kind of like that fishbowl effect, like everyone's always watching you, like people recognize you from your leadership positions. So I think it's really important, and that pretty much in any role you have, that leadership is going to tie in where you're representing something kind of bigger than yourself, which again is to me something I've always like sought after, always really loved. Representing any organization positively in everything I do.
Thanks.
But going into student assistant specifically, leadership in that role definitely just means being independent. We do a lot of things independently, have to be self-motivated, work autonomously. So just the leadership skills really tie in on just being a strong like communicator, problem-solving skills, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. Are there any like specific ways in your current position that you practice those leadership skills that you mentioned, like communication?
Yeah, I'd say, because I was already kind of hinting at it, the biggest like thing about this role that I practice is definitely the independence. I'm normally given a few tasks at a time and then kind of just left to like work on them independently on my own time. And my supervisors expect me to be able to like problem solve, handle those situations with little guidance. So that's really been somewhere where I've grown and been able to practice those skills of being independent. I also really try in general, and this position is efficiency, just being able to get your work done well, but also in a timely manner. I feel like this really shows like that you have a dedication to your responsibilities and you're really attentive. And then just like striving for excellence and all that you do, again, doing your work well and doing it on time, I think is always a great reflection and helps out whoever you're working for, right? So when my supervisors, if I get things done efficiently and I do it well, they're like, oh, okay, she's ready for another task. So it just being that constantly like ready to work, ready to lead, those skills definitely are things I consistently practice in this role.
Great. Yeah, those are great like words to describe leadership and just ways that you can grow in this position. How has it been challenging? Like what's been the most challenging part of working in ResLife?
Yeah, I think all of these questions just keep tumbling into each other. Definitely the ambiguity of it. So again, being able to kind of work with little instruction is definitely also the most challenging part. And even in other roles in res ed, being an RA, like you never know what you're going to experience. And that's like literally the definition of ambiguity is like, there's so many things that can happen. Like you think you're trained to know how to do something, or I mean, we always get training in any role, especially in res ed, but something's always going to surprise you or catch you off guard. So that is definitely probably the most challenging part working in res ed. But yeah, specifically in my current role, again, I was talking about like just being given a task and kind of having freedom to roll with it. So normally like I just get a general vision like, oh, we're kind of looking for this survey to analyze this from students or record this from students, or we need like this sheet developed to organize this information, or we need a program plan. And they're just like, what are your thoughts? Or like work on that for the next week. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it can be challenging, like without clear instructions to know like what they're looking for. But I mean, this is also what a lot of people enjoy. I'm on the edge. I'm definitely getting better at working with ambiguity, but it's again, definitely one of those challenges of working. But sometimes I also like try and flip it to a perspective where it's like when supervisors or any leader is giving you that freedom with roles, I feel like it shows that they have a lot of trust and confidence in you. So it can kind of be very like motivating and empowering to have that freedom, because it's like, oh, okay, they obviously trust me enough that like if they give me this task, they're like, whatever I come up with, it's going to be good. So definitely those challenges, but always trying to like spin it and be like, oh, okay, but this is definitely helping me grow, learn, try something new. So
yeah, the growth you can definitely see over the time for sure. And I mean, being in ResLife, like, yeah, you guys have to be adaptable. You really have no idea what could happen. Like,
exactly.
Like curveballs thrown at you for sure. And sometimes in the moment, it really is just how you react to things. So that is really interesting to hear. On the other hand, what would you say if you had to pick like one thing, the most rewarding part, or just in general working in ResLife in any of your positions?
Yeah, in any of my positions, definitely the most rewarding aspect is just the residents, like doing it for the residents, especially when I was an RA, like that was my motivation always, was how can I better the experience for these students? And I think it's always just for me being like passing it on, being like forming, molding new leaders to be the next generation. I don't know, that got really like
no, for sure.
philosophical, but yeah. So I feel like, yeah, the resident experience and seeing that growth within residents is a really rewarding experience. Seeing how our programs pay off. I feel like in ResLife, it's a very like, we always kind of joke, it's like a thankless job. Residents in the moment don't really realize or comprehend how much you're doing for them. So like a lot of residents will be like, they don't say like thank you for the programs or things like that, which is fine because they think they're too cool for school. But so it's normally a very thankless job, but we can always notice like that development in them. And then, you know, the next year they come back and they're like, oh, you were such a great RA, or that program like totally changed my life, or anyways. But yeah, so they don't notice it in the moment, but seeing them kind of notice that change too is really rewarding. Like, oh, wow, like they really did do a lot for me. It really did shape my college career, because in the moment they don't normally notice it, but once they get a little bit further down the road, they're like, wow, that was a really, you know, my residential experience was really impactful. So
yeah, that's amazing to hear. So I just wanted to touch on one thing you mentioned, like it's a thankless job. How do you think that's like that unselfish kind of attitude is related to leadership?
Oh, I mean, so many ways. Specifically, when we talk about leadership, just the different types of leadership. So obviously, I feel like what I was describing was servant leadership, just like again, doing things for others and not necessarily expecting anything in return or not needing that thank you to keep going. Um, yeah, leadership is just not always about yourself. So I feel like a quote that always comes to my mind when I'm like working in different roles is that a candle doesn't lose anything from lighting another candle. So just like helping people out, it's never going to harm you to share your knowledge or to, you know, again, pass it on, mold a new leader, develop a new generation. Yeah, it's just being selfless in your roles.
For sure, that's amazing. I love that quote. I've not heard that before. That really puts it into an image for sure. All right, so now we're just gonna kind of move on to like your general, like your thoughts on leadership, just pinpointing some leaders in your life. So just to start, what are the most important leadership values to you?
Definitely positivity. I try and really bring like energy into every role that I hold. Definitely like I believe that energy is contagious. Like it definitely affects the people around you. It affects morale, like, and like just what you bring into a space is contagious. If you bring negative energy, like when you walk in the door, like it's going to affect everyone in the room. They're going to be like, oh, like this isn't going to be a good meeting, or this isn't going to be a good class. Like someone's upset. So I think even if you can just like kind of separate your emotions when you step into those spaces, not to say that our emotions aren't valid, because they totally are. Like everybody has a bad day, but I think if you can always put yourself in the mindset, like hopefully you love what you do. So when you walk in, you see somebody else's face, you're like, okay, this is why I'm here. Let me forget about everything else that's happening and just like bring in a fresh, like positive energy into the space. So that's something that like I think really defines me as a leader, is just having that positivity and bringing that energy into a role. Some others just like respect, kindness. I think I already talked about excellence, but I really strive to just like do the best I can in everything that I do. Again, getting all like self-care. Your best looks different every day, so you don't have to be perfect all the time. But yeah, I think if you always like have high standards for yourself, then anything below that is still like really, really exceptional, right? Like if you're like always shooting for the stars, like somewhere even slightly below that is still going to be really great work. So if you set really high expectations, and then even if you don't meet those, you're like, hey, but this was still like a really great program or a really great product. So yeah, I'd say those are some of my biggest ones.
That's great. So you can think back to like your college, just in general.
Interrupting.
Who has been like a really influential leader in your life and why?
Yeah, I think I already talked about my parents a lot, but definitely them. It made like, you know, imprinted a lot of the like the work ethic, communication skills that I still keep with me. And probably going back to dance as well. I had a dance instructor that definitely served as a mentor for me in good and bad ways. Like she was definitely very like strict and often like gave more criticism than praise most days. But in general, still like having that role and having her that discipline really instilled a lot of the leadership skills in me. I still hear her voice like, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late, or like all these things that she used to like say to us during like dance classes or things like that. I think I pull a lot from my dance experience because I was so young, and it like really imprinted a lot on me of like what to take with me going forward.
Yeah, for sure. Those kind of things, they stick with you for sure.
Yeah.
Who's been like a role model or a mentor for you in your college experience?
Yeah. Honestly, I would say my current supervisor and in res ed, he's watched me grow so much. So like I was saying, how I started in residential education my first year with Hall Council and Residence Hall Association. So he's always been the advisor for RHA. And yeah, I've now like followed him or been kind of working under him my entire college career, and just seeing how like the work he does for others, and again that selflessness that he always gave to me, and constantly offering help to RHA and other organizations in res ed, definitely a major mentor in my college career.
That's awesome. So we talk a lot about inclusion here when we're talking about leadership. So especially in residential life, how do you think inclusion plays a role in leadership?
Yeah, I think as like overall philosophies, inclusion and leadership, it's really just like identifying diversity and promoting diversity in a space. Identifying the skills of any group that you're working with is really important, and making sure that they feel like their voice and input are valued. When team members or employees or anything feel included and heard, they are more confident and excited to be in whatever group they're a part of. And really, like, no team or anything should be made up of all of the same kind of people, because I think even when we study like leadership philosophies, like that doesn't, when we all have the same like leadership style, we normally don't like work well together. People clash or things like that. So diversity really just allows you, like, including all of those different diverse leadership skills, really allows for just like more representation, and more voices to be heard. It's always great to have more opinions than less. So yeah, I really think that being a good leader is including other voices and making sure that all people feel like they're a part of whatever group you're leading, a part of, anything like that.
Sure, that's a great answer. So along with inclusion, like we here have a leadership program and we kind of outline 4 core values that we really focus on. So they're empowerment, advocacy, depth, and courage. And because you have such a significant role like in your college experience with younger students or helping other students in general, I wanted to ask you a little bit about empowerment. So to start, just what does empowerment mean to you? Like when you hear the word?
Yeah, I think also, again, what comes back to mind is that quote I already said, that like a candle loses nothing from lighting another candle. That empowering is really just like giving to others, like, and giving them the tools to then be great on their own. So it's that like legacy kind of line of creating other leaders, and again, giving them the tools, the skills to be able to develop as an individual for themselves, and become a leader in their own way, their own right. Yeah.
Nice. So how, like, what are specific ways that you use empowerment in your leadership? It could be in your old role as an RA or in your current role.
Yeah. So I feel like in my past role, it was very much like, and as an RA, definitely felt like that responsibility or that want to empower others, to really help them, again, create a great college experience for themselves. I think, again, empowerment also goes back to not always doing things for your own benefit or for yourself. It's always looking to others and like also like not doing things for them, right? You want to, again, help them build their own skills. So as an RA, it was constantly just like getting them connected with resources. Like, obviously I'm not going to be able to like go to the club meeting with them, like that's not the point. The point is like to empower them to be like, hey, like you would love this organization, or you'd be really great in this role, like you should consider it. Go to the info session or go to one of the first meetings and see if you like it. So I think with being an RA, there's a huge like responsibility to empower residents. Because again, like we talked about, that's their very first experience with the university, especially that first semester that you're their RA for. So empowering them to feel like they can like actually do college, because like the whole concept of being a college student can be really scary. So just instilling it in them that like, hey, like you can do this, like go try something new, I think was a huge part of my role.
Amazing. All right, so we're gonna just do some like little wrap up questions, because everything I've said has been absolutely great, really valuable. So now just kind of looking ahead, you said this is your last year at SDSU. What are you kind of, I know you have like a semester and a half left still, but is there anything cool coming up, anything big on your horizon?
Yeah, I mean, really just graduation, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
a very exciting milestone in my life. After graduation, I hope to and plan to attend the Disney College program.
Oh,
So I'm really excited about pursuing that. Ultimately, just to start working for Disney on like the entertainment side, hopefully on their shows or parades inside the parks. Yeah, just something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm really excited to pursue that. But pretty much that's all. Yeah.
yeah, that sounds awesome. I know a little bit about that program. Is it kind of is like a full year type, or is it kind of like indefinite employment?
So it's technically an internship program,
Okay.
but you can do it up until 2 years after you graduate. So
Oh,
a lot of
nice.
students will do it during
Mhm.
their time at SDSU or at any university. You take like a semester off and you go do the Disney College program. So it is normally like 4 to 6 months, just a semester length, or if you like go over into some of the breaks. But yeah, it's an internship program, but I didn't have time to fit it in during my like actual school
Mhm.
college experience. So I'm planning to do it afterwards. But yeah, it's an internship program. You go and you work for them in the parks, but then you also get a lot of leadership experience, kind of like conference style. You do go and take classes from like Disney executives and things like that, and really learn like more business and leadership skills. So that's kind of what I'm
That-
hoping to do next.
yeah, that sounds amazing. I wish you luck in your pursuit of that. So my last kind of question, you touched on it earlier, but if you could give first year college students one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah. I'm going to say something that I feel like any students have heard endlessly, but I'm going to add something hopefully a little different to it. And it really is just to get involved, but with things that matter to you. So I always like to say, like, don't join clubs just because. Like, choose your involvements wisely. We always hear like quality over quantity, which I think really applies to this as well. If a club or something's not important to you, it's ultimately probably going to be a waste of your time. And our time is valuable in college. Like we have a
Mhm.
lot of things going on. So really, really choose your involvements wisely. But it's so important to get involved, like mainly because whatever involvement it is, it's going to help you grow, learn, meet new people. Hopefully whatever club organization you join, like you'll have the opportunity to hold a leadership position. Then those leadership skills start to develop, and it really is just going to grow your confidence, and you're going to try new things. And I think ultimately, like being in college, it's really about just like blazing your own path, away from your parents for the first time, really becoming your own person. And I think as we all kind of start to learn when we first enter college, like you can really be whoever you want to be. So mold yourself into the best version of yourself that you've ever pictured, and really just do that through involvement. But things that matter to you, like
Yeah.
when you end up putting this organization on your resume or something, like you should be able to talk about it for ages. Like it should be something that you're passionate about, and that like when someone asks you about it, you're like, oh yeah, like we did this and this. It shouldn't just be like, oh yeah, I went to like the meeting once a week, like we volunteered a little, I think, or we had a few programs. Like no, you should be passionate about the things you're doing. Otherwise, ultimately, like I said, it's not going to be worth your time, and it should be something worth your time.
That's great. That's a great qualifier, like that kind of general piece of advice that's often given. Because one of our like values is depth, and it goes right into that, like really giving your all to those few things you choose to do. So I love that.
Yeah.
And actually, I have one more question. So
Yes.
next semester, students can apply, including first year students, to be like the RA, the CA for the next school year. So if you had to give like a little sentence or two that to encourage students to apply, what would you say, like the real perks of the job?
Really, I talked about why it was most rewarding to me, which was passing on that experience to incoming first year students. I highly recommend it, but I really would recommend it if you have that same passion.
Yeah.
A lot of students want to be an RA either because they had a really great RA and they want to be just like them, or they had like a not so great RA and they're like, I want to be better than that, which both are totally valuable.
Yeah.
But I think what really like is driven into us RAs here at SDSU is knowing why you're doing things. This also goes into any other organization you're doing. But when you're applying and when you go through an interview process or anything like that, for RA, identify why you want that role, because it has to be more than just like wanting the perks that we may or may not all know. A lot of RAs get, the free housing,
Right.
sometimes free meal plans, meal, food, whatever, how it works on your campus. But whoever's interviewing you or whoever you're talking to, again, going into that depth, wants to know that there's something more to that. So, I mean, it's okay if you want those perks, they're great. I mean, that was definitely part of the motivation to why I did it. But again, going back to like why you're actually there and being able to express that is always going to be really impressive to someone or to whoever's interviewing you. So figure out why you want to do it. Again, like I said, if it was because you had a good RA, because you had a bad RA, because you just love being a mentor figure, like that, someone that people look up to, if you've had roles like that in the past, yeah, just being able to communicate that and finding out, like, again, the core to why you actually want to do something is always going to be really important for you to drive you, kind of like a mission statement, but also important to whoever is going to hire you for said position. So
oh, that's an amazing answer. It really touches on one of our core values super well and like showcases it. So that is all I have. Do you have any last things you want to add? Any thoughts? That's all I have.
No, I feel like I like poured my soul.
Well, you
Like,
did great.
everybody
You
knows
did
so
great.
much about everything I've done in like college so far. But no, I thank you so much for your questions, and I'm very happy to be a part of this series that you all have going on your campus.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Thank you.
Bye.